You know, after watching the trailers for this movie, I honestly thought, okay, looks a little lackluster, probably have some good action sequences, decent acting and visuals, but a bit of an overly cliched plot. Now, having seen the film, I have to ask, what the hell happened? Is this really the best that they could do? Did Universal really think this was a good starting off point for their dark universe? During the writing, production, editing, screening of this film, did nobody stop to think, hey, we screwed up here. Maybe we should fix it? There is nothing right about this film. Everything, pretty much, is wrong with this movie. The film is directed by Alex Kurtzman, who a lot of people know as one half of the screenwriting and producing duo that also includes Roberto Orci. They've been involved in a number of franchise films, including the first two Transformers films, the first two of the Star Trek reboot films, Mission Impossible 3, and both Amazing Spider-Man films. As a screenwriter, I'm kind of mixed because he has done some stuff that I like, but he's also done a lot of stuff that I really don't like. He's a good producer, but where he really shines is in conceptualization. He's credited as the creator of several hit shows, including Hawaii Five-0, Sleepy Hollow, and most recently, Star Trek Discovery, which I like. As a director, though, his credits are a bit more limited, and based on this movie, I think he needs a little more practice. This movie makes no goddamn sense! From the dialogue, to the character motivations, to the story structure, it is a jumbled mess. Take the opening scene, for example. It starts out in the 12th century during Crusader times with some Crusader knights. They're burying one of their knights with a big red jewel. And two questions come to mind. First, what is the red jewel? Do they explain what it is? Yes. Two, why, in a film about an Egyptian mummy, are there Crusader knights, and why do they have this red jewel? Your guess is as good as mine. Immediately after that scene, we cut to the present, where Dr. Jekyll is digging up the tombs we just saw in order to find said red jewel. Immediately after that scene, we cut back to the past, 5,000 years in the past, where Dr. Jekyll starts narrating the mummy's backstory for this film. The mummy's name is Amenet. Immediately after that, we cut back to the present, where we're introduced to the main character. So they're playing ping pong with the timeline. And the thing is, those two sequences before the backstory are really not necessary. Even more egregious is the fact that everything that was covered back in the beginning is covered later on in the film through character exposition. Meaning you could have actually cut out all that material and just started with Tom Cruise. In fact, it probably would have made the film better. It wouldn't have made it good, but it would have made it better. So the main character of the film is Nick, played by Tom Cruise. He's partnered with Chris, played by Jake Johnson. They work for the military doing reconnaissance work. And on the sidelines, they sneak into areas, steal ancient artifacts, and then sell them on the black market. How do we know this? Through exposition, of course! This film is a critical violator of the phrase show, don't tell, but I'll come back to that later. After an airstrike against a group of insurgents, they come across the tomb that Amenet, the mummy, was buried in. We're then introduced to Jenny, an archaeologist, who basically serves as the information officer for the audience and the love interest for Tom Cruise, I guess. Tom Cruise and Annabelle Wallis, who plays Jenny in the film, have zero chemistry here. They go together about as well as water and cooking oil. And the thing is, both Jenny and Chris have a similar problem. They don't do much in the film. Chris basically acts as the comic relief, whereas Jenny, she does a little bit more, but her sole purpose is basically to get Tom Cruise to where he needs to go, spout exposition, and then get attacked. Seriously, her life being in danger is a critical plot point in this film. It's meant to act as character motivation for Tom Cruise, but it's still a very weak plot point, and like so much in this film, just comes out of nowhere. So as far as show, don't tell goes, This movie does both. So at the beginning of the movie, like I said, you have the tidbit with the knights, and then Amanet's backstory, and all of that is covered on later on, where we're told about it again. There is so much repetition in this movie. You could cut out so much of this film, and it would have no bearing on the story. However, the movie clocks in at about an hour and 50 minutes. I honestly think they cut a lot of content for time restraints. I think they wanted to keep it under 2 hours. Thing is, so much of the content they cut, I'm pretty sure, would have actually explained a lot more of what's going on. I honestly think, with all the content that you could cut from this film, you can add just as much and it would make the film so much more sensible. For example, there's this plot point about the red jewel, and it's key in order to beating the mummy. Where this information is coming from or why they know it, I have no idea. They do not explain it. It comes out of nowhere. Either that or they're trying to say it's just deductive logic. Well, it's bad deductive logic. Or later on in the film, a short time later, the scene when the mummy, she calls forth the sands of Egypt in London. They did it in the Brendan Fraser movie. Why not do it here? Anyway, there's this bus comes sliding towards Tom Cruise and Annabelle Wallis, and so Tom pushes Annabelle out of the way and jumps through the broken windshield. And as the bus comes slowing to a stop, Annabelle's just sitting there watching. It cuts to a short scene, and then it cuts back to Tom Cruise. He's been separated from Annabelle. I had to rewind the movie because I was so confused. I was like, wait, did I miss something? But no. After the bus stops, she just stands there and they're separated. What happened? When Tom Cruise got out, did he walk away and she just stood there staring at him as he walked away? Or was there a scene when they walk together, they get to the subway, and Tom Cruise says, no, you have to wait here, Jenny. It's dangerous. I'll go in alone. And then they argue a little bit, and then she gives in, and he goes in, and then she follows him. I mean, this is hinted at when they meet up again, but it's not shown. Show, don't tell, but tell is still better than doing nothing at all. But hey, that stuff's not important. What is important is that they get out information that this is all part of a shared universe with other monsters, like the creature from the Black Lagoon, or Dracula, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And then there's the ending. I'm not one for spoilers, so I'll just say there are only so many times I can say it doesn't make sense before I start to wonder if there was really any thought being put into it. The visual effects were kind of up and down here and there. I mean, at certain points they were pretty good, at other times not. The acting in the film was not great. Now I want to say I'm not too familiar with a lot of the actors in this film. There weren't any particularly bad performances. It's just I didn't think there were any that really stood out. Particularly Tom Cruise. I like Tom Cruise a lot as an actor. I saw him in American Made earlier this year, and I thought he did a fantastic job in that. But in this, he just did not seem to be giving it his all. And the thing is, I think it was just the material they were given. They didn't have the material that really allowed themselves to express themselves as actors. With all that said, I do have to say there are some things about the film that I actually did like. I do think they were well done. For one thing, some of the visuals in the film were actually pretty good. The scene with the sand in the city actually had some really good visuals that I really liked. Even though they did feel like kind of a rip-off of The Mummy, the 1999 version, and it made no sense. Some of the creature effects, like the shambling corpses, they were done really well. And of course, then there's Sofia Boutella, who I actually haven't mentioned by name because I actually did want to point out, I think she actually did a good job. She was good as the mummy. I think, you know, not just her performance, you know, her movements. Again, really not much else I can say. She did a good job. I do want to say, though, it was a little distracting, the symbols on her. Right between her eyes, it looked like it was saying triangle equals X. It is kind of hard to concentrate when you're constantly being reminded of that. And then Russell Crowe as Jekyll and Hyde. Russell Crowe actually did a really good job here. I think even though some of the dialogue that he was given is some of the stupidest in the movie. In fact, it was one scene that actually made me I literally did this and fell on the floor. I could not believe he was saying this. But it wasn't him, it was just the dialogue that he was given. But he did a good job, especially as Hyde. It was a great performance and a very creative choice on his part to do what he did. I think that was really well done. And also, I think that Jekyll and Hyde, it was actually a good choice in order to get this kind of tie together for a broader cinematic universe for these movie monsters. I think that was one of the few things about this film I actually think was creatively smart, for lack of a better term. Now, I don't think it's really fair to talk about the writing in this film without talking about the writers themselves. The film has actually 6 writing credits under it, 3 of which are for screen story. One of those credits goes to Alex Kurtzman. The other 3 are for writing the screenplay. One of them is an actor who doesn't have a lot of writing credits to his name. One of them is David Coep? Not sure. And he's worked on a bunch of successful movies, including Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible, and the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man. He's had a few duds later on in his career, but he's a successful and professional screenwriter. The other writer is named Christopher McQuarrie, and he has a number of writing credits to his name as well, including The Way of the Gun, Edge of Tomorrow, and The Usual Suspects. So this is an Oscar-winning writer they had working on their screenplay, and it turned out like this. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the problems with the narrative structure probably had less to do with inexperience and more to do with a clash of ideas that just could not meld together. And if that's the case, that totally makes sense. Doesn't excuse it, but it does make sense. Now, on the question of would I recommend this? This may be surprising, but yes, I would. To me personally, this film is one of those films that's so bad, it's good. Despite all its problems, it was entertaining. And it was so enjoyable to watch because I really had fun sitting there and analyzing it and dissecting it and discussing everything that was wrong with it. The next movie on their list is Bride of Frankenstein, I believe. And I don't know how that's going to go. Here's hoping that it's actually a good movie. That's me. I'm one of those people who wants all movies to be good. But if it is going to be bad, I kind of hope it's this bad, because at least then I'd have a really enjoyable movie. Because isn't that why we go to the movies? To enjoy them, not to see bad movies. Despite the performances by Boutella and Crowe, I cannot give this movie any more than 0.5 out of 10. It is a train wreck of a movie. The story is a complete mess. For the most part, the performances are subpar with what I know the actors can do. And it makes no goddamn sense. And here's hoping for better success in the future. That's what I got. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.